Welcome back to A Metal Strings. Today we're going to start breaking down vertical movement on the guitar. Vertical movement is the motion that we make when we go from string to string, or in other words, this way on the guitar neck. And specifically today we're going to be looking at only moving to adjacent strings. So in other words, we're not going to talk about string skipping quite yet. That'll be saved for the next video. Furthermore, we're going to separate vertical movement between the right hand and the left hand. So today we're going to focus specifically on the left hand and its function as it moves up and down the strings, not the picking hand. So if you're here to learn how to sweep pick, you're in the wrong place. Go somewhere else. There's tons of tutorials on YouTube that are awesome that will help you out with that, but today we are looking at the left hand. We're going to begin with a bit of a breakdown of the joints and muscles that are in play when we're trying to do this movement on the guitar going across strings. And then we're going to get into a couple of exercises that I've made that will help you isolate those movements and maybe dial into those inefficiencies that you have that might be preventing you from moving forward in your playing. So in general, the focus of all of these exercises is going to be to isolate and then coordinate the movements of the elbow, forearm, wrist, and fingers in order to move vertically across the strings. These exercises can ultimately lead to some sweep picking practice, some selective picking practice, getting better at chord changes, and ideally just injury-free playing for the rest of your life. I find them super useful as just a general warm-up for your practice session. They're also very useful if you have to switch your guitar to maybe a 6-string or an acoustic or a classical and reorient yourself to the string spacing. You can use these exercises. They're also really wonderful if you just need to get out of a rut and you've been practicing the same thing over and over and over and you're not seeing any improvement anymore. As always, there's a PDF down below of the exercises we're going to be going through, so make sure you download it so that you can follow along with what we're doing and put it on your practice stand at home. And before we get going, let's clarify some terms, just to make sure there's no confusion going forward and we're all on the same page. So what is up and what is down when we're talking about going to an adjacent string? If I say go up a string, which direction do we go? The answer to this is that up is toward the floor and down is toward the ceiling. Similarly, when we were talking about moving horizontally on the neck, we have to think about how the sound changes as we move in that direction, right? So as we move up the guitar neck, the sound goes higher, therefore toward the body is up. With strings, when we're moving up a string, we're going to a higher sounding string. The highest sounding string is the one that's closest to the floor. The lowest is the closest to the ceiling. So just keep that in mind. Up is actually down and down is up. Hope that makes sense. By understanding the different muscles and joints that are at work that help us move vertically across the strings, we can hopefully understand, the most ergonomic and healthy way to move while practicing the guitar, and that way we can avoid injury and have lifelong playing, be happy, not in pain, all that good stuff. So let's take a look at the different pieces that are at work. The first is the elbow. If I just simply drag my finger across the guitar neck and don't change anything in my wrist, you can see that my elbow is what is causing that bend, right? If we just bend our arm from hanging straight and lift it up, that's the vertical motion. The elbow is going to be the largest point of movement in the body in this motion. So it's always going to be the easiest to execute, but it won't have to move that much. The next thing that is helping us move vertically across the strings is going to be the forearm, actually. If we simply twist at the elbow, you can see my fingers drop and the angle of my wrist changes, right? Trying not to bend my wrist as well. If we just twist here, right, I can drop the pinky finger and that will allow me to get to a lower string. So combined with elbow motion, already we have a lot of ways to get around the guitar neck. We can twist in and out and bend up and down. The third point of contact is going to be the wrist, right? I can just sit here and not move my elbow or forearm and bend my wrist back and up in order to hop across the strings, trying not to move my fingers as well. This is a very useful place to bend, and very many different configurations can be achieved with the wrist. However, it is one of the weakest spots. It is where so many people get injuries like carpal tunnel, tendonitis. So if we can lower tension on the wrist while we're playing, that is ideal, and instead put a lot of that motion into the forearm and elbow. Lastly, we have the fingers. If I don't move anything else, I can still get from the top of the neck to the bottom with my fingers. Okay? So combining all of those movements together means no one piece should be doing all of the work. A lot of people, like I mentioned, put all of that work into their wrist, and then they end up with issues here. So always keep in mind that you have many different areas that are going to be doing work when we're doing these exercises, so no one part of your body has to take on that load all by itself. So with all that said, let's get into the exercises and see what we're going to be working on today. So this first exercise focuses on a bit of the wrist bending, as well as keeping a soft grip with the thumb so that we have the ability to move up and down the back of the guitar neck and we're not gripping too tightly and preventing the elbow and forearm from doing what they need to do. To break this one down, it's simply 2 finger stacks, the first on the lowest 4 strings on fret 6, and then the next one on the highest 4 strings on fret 5. So we have 2 kind of quartal shapes or fourth shapes here. Okay, but we're going to arpeggiate it, which allows us to get those fingers out of the way and continually move into a more comfortable position. With each finger, I kind of have this optimal, most comfortable spot that I want to hold all my joints at. There for the index finger, middle finger, ring finger is a little bit more in with the elbow, and then pinky, you can see this part of my hand is almost touching the guitar neck now, as opposed to when I started with the index. So as we move down the arpeggio, we can kind of rotate into those positions, and then reverse the process on the way back. What not to do is to grip as tight as you can, and try to keep all the fingers stacked. That's just going to create messy playing, first of all, and we don't want that. And it's going to put a lot of tension into the wrist, and you're going to get fatigued super quickly, and you're going to find that you slow down just because that lactic acid is building up, the tension in the forearm is there. So keep it loose, keep it slow. We always want to do these exercises slowly so we can focus on the movement. And think about where your arm wants to rest. Like, let gravity do the work, pull it to its most comfortable position. You can try these in different frets. It becomes harder as you move up the fretboard because you have less space to work with on the frets. And if you want a bit of an easier version, you can go down to fret 2 and fret 1. Notice that the shoulder will be a little more raised though in order just to reach out that far. Exercise 2A on the PDF looks something like this. Alright, so this is kind of a pattern that people use when they're practicing sweep picking actually. And we're going to start always with finger 1 for this one, so keep that in mind. So it's 5, 6, 7, 8 on the lowest 4 strings, and then 5, 6, 7, 8 on the top 4 strings. And then it's the same thing, 5, 6, 7, 8, but we're going to reverse the pattern now. To this shape on the highest 4 strings, and then 5, 6, 7, 8 on the lowest 4 strings. So always start with the index and build out. Will be easy to remember this one. Now the focus of this one is definitely going to be the rotation of the forearm. As we do these shapes, you can see they're on a pretty severe angle, and it's going to cause that forearm and elbow to lift in order to drop the pinky and get the index finger higher. If we were just to play those shapes as chords, that's what it would look like. However, when we invert them and come backwards, the opposite happens, where we have to push the pinky higher, drop the index finger, and the elbow, as a result, is pulled into the body. Okay, so be mindful of when we're traveling up the strings, we kind of have this open arm position, and when we're traveling back down, it's a lot more closed. And similar to the last exercise, as you move, your elbow will want to naturally fall into its most comfortable position if you let gravity do the work. One last thing to keep in mind with this one is, again, do not press too hard with the thumb. The thumb is going to want to crawl a little bit between the notes in order to keep a balanced grip. the thumb is always going to want to kind of stay behind the tips of the fingers. Exercise 2B is going to be essentially the same thing, just inverted, so we're starting with our pinky finger. Just a brief word about the picking hand. As we're going, we want to keep a very smooth and steady motion as we're going across the strings. And think about not arriving to the string before you actually need to get there. So the pick should be in constant motion and only hit the string as it passes by. So really slow this exercise down if that's not already something you can do. And see if you can time the pick with when the note actually needs to sound, rather than getting there beforehand, like that. Things get a little bit more complicated now with exercise 2C. Looks a little bit like this. Alright, so this one, because the fingers have this more even spacing, kind of this chord shape here, we don't get to rotate the forearm as much because we're not having a predictable diagonal that we can follow, and we have to kind of keep the pressure, or keep the spread even. So that means this one is going to have a little bit more focus on the elbow, helping us move up and down those strings, as the forearm and wrist is a little bit more stationary. The fingers as well are going to be doing quite a bit of work in order to keep the correct bend as you go up and down. So this exercise, if you want to think of it in a pattern, is 2-4-1-3, no matter which way we're going. So 2-4-1-3, 2-4-1-3, 2-4-1-3, 2-4-1-3. Okay, make sure to take these slow at first when the fingers are just getting used to the shapes, and then once you have it, you can, well, keep going slow, honestly, and then focus on the movement. Lastly, with 2D on the PDF, it's going to be very similar to 2C. We're just going to mix up the pattern on the left hand. Again, we're not going to be rotating with the forearm very much on this one, or the wrist bending. We're going to be mostly using our elbow and fingers to compensate for the awkward shape. I keep saying it, but I'm going to say it again, just because I can't emphasize this enough. Make sure to keep a light pressure with the thumb, right? With all of this movement, these awkward shapes, maybe new chord shapes, the temptation is to squeeze harder, to have more control over what's going on in the guitar neck, but we really want to be loose, allow that thumb to glide across the back of the neck, and let your elbow and forearm and wrist and fingers all work together to balance out the effort that's required to hit them. You should be able to do these without your thumb, actually. If you want to try, as a good little challenge, you can open the thumb up. Pressure is coming from the elbow pulling in. So that's it for the exercises. There's some tips on the PDF if you want to start working on selective picking and work on your accuracy at kind of a higher level than what we did today. In the next video, we're going to continue on with this topic of vertical movement, but we're going to begin looking at string skipping, which requires a little bit more dexterity and agility to get across those strings. So that's it for now. Keep practicing, and hope you have a great rest of your day.